Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's video, I am bringing you a first year fashion design student sketchbook tour. Now this video is definitely different to all of my previous videos, which have been crochet related. This is what my life has basically revolved around for the past 3 months, and is also a reason why I haven't been so active on YouTube. And I just thought I may share it for anybody who is interested as to what I get up to outside of crochet, and then also for anybody who is interested in fashion design and becoming a fashion design student. I hope that with my sketchbook tour I'm able to enlighten you as to what it is that we actually do, because I remember that when I was applying for my course at my school, I didn't exactly know what it was that I was going to be doing. Of course, you know, you typically think of fashion illustrations and creating the garments themselves, but there is so much that actually goes into the research part, which then allows you to actually create final garments, if you get what I mean. So I hope that you can enjoy this video. I know it is a bit of a long one, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you. So as you can see, I have 2 sketchbooks here. I have covered my personal information. This first one is definitely the thicker one, and it is my research sketchbook. So it has basically everything that has allowed me to even begin this one, which is my design development sketchbook. So I will show you this one after this one. I do just want to say we have a fallen soldier. My nail broke. I just want to apologize for him. Ignore him this video. Yeah, this is my research sketchbook. And when we first open it, I do have loose papers. Now moving on to the actual work. So the first bit of work that I have in my sketchbook is a mind map. It's an initial ideas mind map, so all of my initial ideas before the project even started are on here. So the main 4 are 1920s makeup and fashion, doll makeup and fashion, architecture, Denmark, Copenhagen. So at this point, like when I had created this mind map, I had just returned from my school trip to Copenhagen, and I knew that I wanted to include Copenhagen in my final major project somehow. And it's when I found out that The Little Mermaid was actually like quite meaningful to Denmark, especially Copenhagen, because Hans Christian Andersen is the original like creator. He wrote the literary fairy tale of The Little Mermaid. So I thought that instead of looking into doll makeup and fashion, I could swap it with The Little Mermaid, because although she's not a doll, she does sort of fit into what I was thinking of exploring. So me swapping the doll makeup and fashion with Little Mermaid allowed me to still explore a similar style, but then also create a direct link to Copenhagen, and that is exactly what I wanted. So here I wrote I could research her and watch the film, which I did. And then here I wrote create shell-shaped cups out of clay to experiment with mediums and techniques. Now here I would say my view of mermaids was quite stereotypical, you know, where the shell cups and they have a long tail. However, that wasn't quite where I wanted to take my project, and you'll see that later on. So then I have an arrow pointing to porcelain corsets, because this was also another initial idea that I had, and I think that the clay shell cups sort of reminded me of the porcelain corsets, because both clay and porcelain are fragile. And then I put research typical mermaid costumes for inspo, and I wanted to look at the typical mermaid like costumes, because I could see what I would change and what I would keep. So this is where it all began. And then I decided, in response to the initial ideas mind map, I would create a mood board. So here I have the 1920s makeup that I was thinking of, and then these 2 ladies with the corsets to represent the doll aesthetic. And then here I was moving on to the more mermaid aesthetic. And then I have some like little color swatches in the background. Then we have the literary fairy tale. So this is an extract from the original Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen and some of the original illustrations. And here is a little card. This is from Denmark. I got this from my hotel where we were staying. And then this was my initial experimentation with fabric. So this is my fabric board, and you can see I experimented with a lot of lace. I picked up a lot of lace. I mean, it all practically is. We have some like net fabric here, and I really do like the layout of this board. However, I don't like, even in the beginning, I didn't think that this was going to be my final fabrics. I didn't feel as though this was where I wanted to take my final major project. Then we have my concept board. So we have the statue of the Little Mermaid. This is a picture from Copenhagen. I didn't take this picture, but we actually went on a boat tour on my school trip, and we didn't go directly past the mermaid statue, but the tour guide did say that she was around. It's a bit of a shame that we didn't get to see her up close. Up here we have a picture of my hand. I was holding a keychain here, and it has coral reefs, a shell and a turtle, and I felt like just even the keychain symbolized my theme quite well, you know, sea life. And then we have two pictures of the Little Mermaid. This picture is very significant to my project, and you'll see why later. And then we have fish. I thought that I was going, well, we have a fish. I thought that I was going to explore the theme of fishes a bit more. However, I didn't end up doing so. And then we have just a picture that I took from an airplane of the clouds. The way that the clouds were formed kind of reminded me of a mermaid, so I just drew that here. And then here on the back of this paper, I wrote possibilities, quarter cup, asymmetric, shell design. So as I mentioned when I was showing the mind map, at this point, my views on the way that mermaids were dressed was quite stereotypical. So, you know, shell cups, a nice flowy tail. So I drew two cups here, and then I expanded on the sort of like cup, you know, idea, and I drew it more detailed here. And I thought to have a crochet fishnet going over her, over the model, and then having maybe like gathered fabric, ruched fabric to, not ruched, more so gathered, to represent the tail. Then moving on to locations. Here is where I start to put emphasis on locations. So of course, as my theme is now around Copenhagen, the Little Mermaid, I decided to evidence my trip. So we have a bunch of receipts, we have some tags, some 150 krones. This again I got from my hotel, and my pass, at least said passport, my boarding pass. And then I stuck that on the back of a shopping bag. My friend gave it to me. She was like, I don't need it, do you want it? So I was like, okay. And I used it for collage. Then here we have the colourful houses, again from Copenhagen. These are my own pictures, and I just stuck it on the back of calico just to make it look a bit more interesting. Here we have the marble church, which this tag is also from the hotel. I decided to illustrate the marble church. Then we have my CSM Insights page. So during Easter, I attended the CSM Spring Insights, and here I'm just showing that, my little tag. And then here is my work, some of the work that I did at the Insights. So this is a zine that we made in the Insights event, and it was about identity. We had to make it personal to ourselves. So I took a picture of my palm because everyone has different palm prints, and then these flowers to represent femininity, and then my Pandora bracelet because of course that's important to me. I also took a picture of the music that I was listening to at the time. So then this page to symbolize hard work and work ethic, I took a picture of my surroundings at the Insights event. Here, to be honest, we were running out of time, so I thought let's experiment with tape. So then we had a Polaroid taken of us. I'm pretty sure this was like the first thing that we did when I like got to the Insights. So they took a Polaroid of us and we were supposed to basically reinvent it, make it look different than it originally was. So I cut mine in half and then I folded it, sewed the like edges together, and then drew on it with Sharpie, drew some eyes and a skirt. Yeah, I don't really like it very much, and that's it for the zine. Then we have more of my CSM work. So we did some life drawings. I drew an ear, and then also we have a crochet little sample here because it's quite ironic really. During the breaks of the Insights, they were doing crochet, experimental crochet in fact, and basically they were using a bunch of different materials to crochet with. Now people were crocheting with like clothes hangers and beams. It was something that even I as a crocheter haven't seen before. But yeah, so I used like string, orange string here. This is just regular purple yarn and I mixed the two here. It was quite fun. Like I was even teaching the teachers how to crochet. So yeah, and then I pinned these onto the CSM bag that they gave us once we finished. Now we have some more life drawings. I drew some faces. I feel like I could bring it closer. And then we also did some pattern designing. So I just used lines to experiment with patterns. And then I developed the pattern on this page and I used the lines to create leaves, and I also experimented with different shapes. And then this picture is from my trip to Germany. I was walking through a park and I saw these leaves and I thought these look like the ones in my sketchbook, especially like these ones here. So I thought I'd show that. And then this page here, I was initially going to cover it up, but people were telling me not to because they thought the way that the charcoal printed on, like they said it could represent the sky, and I like at that point I hadn't finished the buildings, but when people were telling me not to, they told me to finish the buildings and leave the page. So of course these are the colourful houses from Copenhagen. I still don't know how I feel about this page, but I just decided not to cover it. Then we have films, like films that are relevant to our project or that inspire us. So of course we have The Little Mermaid, then we have H2O. We also have Gordon Ramsay. A lot of people were looking at me funny when I printed this out. Bear with me. We have Finding Nemo as well. And yeah, these were all, obviously I watched these to like research for my project. And then Gordon Ramsay was just something that I was watching with my mom. We were watching his Uncharted series. And there was a point where he was, I don't know if it was in Hawaii, but he was scuba diving and basically sea life was shown and it was beautiful. So I thought I'd include it. Also, yeah, Finding Nemo, pretty self-explanatory. Then I conducted interviews. So I interviewed my friends and also my mom. And I basically asked them, how do mermaids make you feel? What comes to mind when you think of one besides your first answer? If a mermaid were a full human, how would you imagine them to dress? They obviously gave me answers. I highlighted the key information. One of my friends even sent me pictures of clothes that they imagined mermaids to wear. My mom's interview. And here I just drew some details from what they had said to me. And then these are just basically me imagining some of their responses. So this is my mom's response. She was like a long skirt down to the ankles with a white blouse. So this was my interpretation of it. This drawing I don't really like very much, but it was supposed to be like a asymmetric gathered like long dress with flared sleeves. You can see there's a theme for flared sleeves and you'll see how I developed that. Now we are moving on to the National Museum of Denmark. So this is still a location. These are pictures of a bison skeleton, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong. And then these, they told us, I think, were weapons that they used. So the museum, or the part of the museum that we were taken to, was about, I think it was like the first people in Scandinavia, so how they hunted bison, and the size of the bison was huge. It was basically about how the Scandinavians, I'm pretty sure, used these as weapons. So yeah, and then this is the National Museum of Denmark, and then this is the Design Museum of Denmark. And I created a mood board. I want to say this is like one of, if not my favorite mood board that I have created. I also forgot to mention that I wrapped yarn around this mood board, and it, like, if you can see the light, like the spaces in between the bones, this does come to play later on with my design development. And I used yarn to also, I don't want to say replicate that, but definitely experiment with textiles and materials and mediums. Back to this mood board. So this mood board I created to basically summarize my trip to the design museum, and created an interesting layout. And then when I was showing my sketchbook to my teacher, she said to me that this mood board itself can represent my theme. She told me that the coral, like the, I can't remember what this exactly was. It does look like balloons knotted together. There was a light in the middle of it, so it was like a light case, if you will. And we basically agreed that this reminds us of coral, this reminds us of water, and then this little guy reminds us of fish. So I thought this was really interesting. And then we also agreed that both of these mood boards next to one another almost represent like death and life and death, because of the colors and also the skeleton, and how it's just the stark contrast. So that's what I wrote on this sticky note here. So now we are moving on to my textile artist research. So I looked at Karen Margolies, Mariko Kusumoto, I'm pretty sure. These are all of her works. They're from the same image, I just cut them up. And then this is from the designers at Fancy Club. So this is the brand Fancy Club. And then I also included the porcelain corset that I was talking about in the beginning. This is a porcelain corset from Joyce Spackman. She creates a lot of beautiful corsets like this, and this was an idea that I considered in the initial stages of my design process. And after speaking with my teacher about the porcelain corset and how it was an initial idea of mine, she said that if I had the interest to, I could still work with porcelain but not create the porcelain corset. So she suggested I create an accessory, say for example a bracelet, and I really did enjoy that, so I made a post-it note. And then this page is my like chosen secondary images page. So I also like use the images to create this into like a color palette page too. So this image here could represent, say, my area for photo shoot. I could do it on a beach. This lady was laying on a sunbed. I cut her out, drew some long hair and a tail to represent the mermaid. And then these close-ups of like the sea, a little cave, greenery, were to almost convey the color palette. Then we have like a sunset sky, which was what I was thinking of having for my photo shoot, so on a beach during the sunset or sunrise. And then this was from a garment, this was from a dress, and I thought it looked like a jellyfish, and obviously jellyfish fit into my theme. So I wrote that this jellyfish could be an accessory too. So because I wasn't really thinking about accessories at this point in my work, and after the discussion with my teacher, I started to consider those two. Then moving forward, this is a page from a magazine, and because the 1920s was an original like idea for me, something that I wanted to possibly pursue, I thought that this was really inspirational to me. I really liked the artwork here, and if I were to continue with the 1920s theme, I think this would be very influential, especially the way that the models are illustrated. I did actually use this style for my own illustrations, which you will see later on. And after, again, another discussion with my teacher, we highlighted that the hair of these women is quite interesting, so I could do the same for my models. I could have the models be 1920s theme, or like as in the models which will show my design, or even like the actual model herself. I could have done that. Then this page, I created this to, I guess, show off the architecture from Copenhagen. So I remember I really loved these buildings when I was there. Every time we would walk past them, they just really caught my eye. And then some more buildings. These were under construction, and I added like texture to them. I added a, what would you call it, like an interactive element, because I really like sketchbooks that are interactive, that have, you know, flaps and things just to do with your hands. This was an aquarium inside of the mall. These were little ringlets on the ceiling of the airport, I'm pretty sure. We had some fish, and both of these are from the mall that we went to. Some fish on the ceiling. This was like a really cool fish statue, and I just think everything really links perfectly with each other, especially like the colors. And then I remember that I was thinking to myself at this point that I didn't have much design work, so I created a gathered sample, and I just experimented with draping. So I manipulated them around the mannequin, and this is what I came up with. I also did some observational drawings from those drapings, and I annotated them. This really reminded me of a leaf. This is my favorite fabric manipulation draping that I did. And what I like, the thought I had at the point was having it like drape around the body, around the front of the body, or even around the back, but in these two images I wanted them to kind of wrap around the front. And then I show this in this illustration, so you can see it goes around the front, although it's not to the ankles like I said here. Gathering continues down to the ankle. It's still, I still do enjoy the look of this illustration. And then as you can see with these, I have implemented the designs here, like the drapings into the designs, and I went for a sort of 1920s illustration style, especially with this model. I don't think these two sort of look 1920s, but I think this one definitely does. Probably my favorite. Then in school we did some flat lays. We did these basically just the same color, different tones. So here we did the color orange. Did I write notes on the back? Yeah, light oranges, folder highlighter powder, and then we have, okay, I didn't make a note, but I guess this is mixed. And then what is this? Vibrant oranges. And then to match, I put them in a light orange, or sort of a peachy color folder. Not folder, envelope, sorry. And then another flat lay that we did was the color black. So, well, black and white. I experimented with the backgrounds, which I really like. And then we did also a red flat lay and a blue and yellow one. So these tasks were really good for us to experiment with colors and possibly create color palettes, which is what we actually moved on to doing here. So if you can see, this flat lay is similar to this one. Not this one, but like this piece. So the task here was, as a class, we were supposed to pick an image which really represented our theme at that point, and then create color palettes out of it. We had to find the codes for the colors as well. And yeah, this was even the sort of photo shoot style that I was thinking of going for. This is another color palette that I created from pictures that I took in a museum in Germany. So you can see that even still they are relevant to, somewhat relevant to the colors here. I just thought they were really beautiful. And even like themselves, like they could just literally be a color palette on their own. So here I used the images of architecture that I collected to symbolize fish scales in a way. And you can see all of the different shapes. I thought I could link this to fish scales. So then I collected fabrics here which remind me of said fish scales. And I think that this fabric goes really well when compared to this one. And then moving on to this, I'm pretty sure this was one of my first textile samples, if I'm not mistaken. I crocheted a coral reef sample here and I draped it on my mannequin. Then it was Easter. Was it Easter at this point? I think it was. And my mum and I, we were dyeing eggs. This is how we do it in our country. And when we cut into the cabbage, I really liked the look of it, so I took a picture. And I think that the movement of the coral, the way that it like expands, is similar to that of the cabbage. So I decided to take pictures and then print them out and stick them in my sketchbook. So this is my target audience board. It basically has what lifestyle the target audience are living, where they're located, their income, you know, their background, who they are. And here is a SWOT analysis that I did, and it is basically, if I were a brand, how would I like analyze myself? So S stands for strengths, W weaknesses, opportunities, and then the T, I think it could be targets. And then if we flip this over, we have more pictures of Noah Kirel. She is a Israeli singer and she performed at the Eurovision, and I followed her on Instagram. I really liked her and I had to pick a muse for this project, so I picked her. Then moving on, I was away 2 times during this project, and one of the times I had to go back to my home country and I couldn't do work in my sketchbook, so I brought my iPad with me, and what I did was I looked at textile artists and designers on Vogue Runway and I picked out a few. I liked this designer. I don't want to say the name because I'll probably say it wrong. I liked their use of smocking and then also the way that they layered different textile techniques and just fabric over one another. I thought it was really interesting and I could do something with that. So then I experimented with the different textile techniques myself. So here we have wave smocking, obviously relevant to my theme because it's waves, sea life. Then we have lattice smocking, and I think this was my least favorite one that I had to do. It looks like I also do have the physical textile samples, however I have handed them in yesterday. I brought them to school to hand them in. And then we have honeycomb smocking, which is my favorite, probably. I love it, any excuse to do it. Then we have Ester Manas. I found this designer really influential to my work because of the colors that they use, and I did speak about the connotations of the colors too, but we'll get to that later on. So I do create a link to Ester Manas later on. This is probably my favorite page in my sketchbook because I love it. This is the designer Caroline Hu, so I looked at her textile designs, and yeah, just beautiful work really. She also used this skirt part is zip ties, which I thought was really cool. This reminds me of laminated flowers. And then this is my drop stitch knitting textile sample, and I decided to just pin it in my sketchbook. And then here we have more textile designer research that I laid out interesting. And then at this point, I spoke to my teacher, I showed her my sketchbook, and she told me, remember the fabric board that I created at the very beginning of the project? She told me that I should create a mind map or a board of all of the relevant fabrics. And so I've done a lot of textile samples and illustrations that just don't include those fabrics. So she told me to create a mind map or a fabric board of all of the relevant fabrics that I am interested in using. I don't know if this is focused. So I have yarns. So I have yarns here. I have linen, mesh, chiffon, and I did consider using linen, and I will show you when it gets to that point where that was. Underneath here we have a color palette board created out of images of nature. I really do like this page. I think it's interesting because I have used images, not just like solid colors. I've used images to create the color palette. These are pictures from a park I went to in Germany, and very nature themed color palette. Then if we go to the next page, again, this is to do with my trip to Germany. And yeah, these are some pictures from the museum. And then they also had a wall here. And if you can see right here, there were all of these cards right here, and you could basically pick up a card and put them here on the wall. And what they were about was, they were about, like, these are only 3 of the cards, but these say, what is romantic music for you? Can you give an example? What color do you associate with longing? Does the world need to be romanticized? Why or why not? And I, of course, put my answers. If you want to read them, you can pause the screen. And I felt like this was the perfect way for me to now explore love within The Little Mermaid, because obviously The Little Mermaid is what everything has to come back to, because, you know, she, as well as the original Little Mermaid literary extracts, are the main themes of my project. So of course the Little Mermaid's, I guess, longing for love is a very prominent factor in The Little Mermaid, and I think the way that she wants to be loved and wants to love is quite pure. So I decided to then compare her sort of like pure love to the way that sirens deceive men. So sirens are typically deceitful, they're harmful, they're alluring, they're beautiful, but obviously that's not what is depicted here underwater. This is an artwork, I'm pretty sure. And if you can see, there are skulls and basically death under here, and she's trying to lure him in with her beauty, and she's gonna kill him basically. And obviously the way that love is depicted here is very different to the way that it's depicted here, and that is what I wanted to explore. And I did ultimately end up exploring that in my final piece, which I will of course show you when it gets to it. So if you remember from my fabric board, I mentioned that I wanted to include linen, and I had orange linen fabric. It was gifted to me, and I wanted to use it to create a dress like this. And I didn't end up doing so, but this is my initial, like one of my initial illustrations. And I used, so if you remember earlier when I said that I wanted to still explore the 1920s style but with illustration, that is exactly what I did here. The linen orange dress on a 1920s model. And then this was a quick exercise that we did in the morning at school. My teacher put on a runway video, and we had 5 minutes to, not 5 minutes each, but the video was about 5 minutes. And as the models were walking down the runway, we had to quickly sketch the shapes of what they were wearing. I really do like this skirt. I feel like I may explore this sort of style in the future. This was good practice. I think it's good at, like, you know, gathering shapes. And then this is my, I think that this is my preferred like design process. I really enjoyed taking pictures that inspired me and then annotating them as to what I liked, what I didn't like, what I would change. Like for example here, this is a set from, I think the brand is called Work from Beach, and I really liked it. However, I put that I would change the skirt to maxi length because I was quite interested in having a maxi length dress. And I also really enjoyed how this is Ester Manas work. I really enjoyed how this dress was modest on one side, but then the asymmetry made it quite sensual. So both modesty and sensuality were explored in this one dress. And then again, we have the asymmetric cut, and then we have the bolero sleeves, or the shrug. And then, yeah, it's just some more annotations. I drew my own sort of asymmetric top, and then the shrug. So I'm back. The lighting has changed a little bit because it is later. And this is my, I want to say, image idea summary page. So I spoke to my teacher at this point about feeling a bit stuck with, like, in terms of ideas, design ideas. And she told me to go through my sketchbook and pick out images that I had already had in my sketchbook. So not new ones online, but images that were already there, and images that inspired me, and then collage them onto the page. And that is exactly what I did. So I want to say it all started from this image. I wrote on a sticky note here. I read a comment under this post that said, "This piece resembles being at the forest and the beach simultaneously." And I thought, to someone, this piece has almost set a background, maybe of that of a story. So I then looked at this picture of Ariel, and remember I said it was significant to my final piece. So I looked at this image and I thought, well, what if I used textile techniques to then tell a story with my final garment, and the story will be that of when Ariel grew her legs. And then the textile technique that I wanted to use was this drop knit stitch, and have like a dress similar to this. And then for the accessory, I thought I would have a jellyfish on the shoulder, and I would also have maybe a rope as well on the garment. And then I've also included a picture of a siren. So I wanted to include seaweed and algae, and I would have the seaweed and algae represent sirens. However, at this point I didn't know how I would do that, but I did know that I wanted to have a direct contrast between the sirens and Ariel in the final garment. And here, if you're interested, you can just pause to read what I've wrote. I have a picture of the head of a model from the Ester Manas Fall 2023 Ready to Wear collection, and the reason why I have her there is because she's wearing red earrings. And in this collection, all of the models, I'm pretty sure, had their nails painted red, and red just seems to be a very prominent color in this collection. And I thought, because Ariel had red hair, I thought it could symbolize her, you know, desire to be loved. And so I wanted to include red in my accessories as well. And you'll see how I've done that. I don't want to spoil it yet. Then moving on to this here, this is a fabric board, I think it's called. So this is an updated fabric board, and I have samples here. I'm not sure how well you'll see, but because of the yarn, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but this is just like single crochet, like a little single crochet sample. This is also a single crochet sample too. So these were the fabrics that I decided to use at this point. So I also thought it would be interesting to include pictures of, like, these two are also samples, the pictures. I thought it would be interesting to include pictures because it would be like, you know, we have the real life samples and then pictures, like it could create a nice little contrast. Yeah, moving forward, I also had a bunch of real shells that I decided to scan, and these are just the scans. I thought that they looked really nice. They almost looked like they were floating through the water. And here is like a little booklet of me, the process of me washing, drying. There's no picture of me sealing the shells, but I did also seal them. And then this is a scan of my knit sample, of one of my knit samples that I made. And I really like this because I was moving the sample on the scanner, and because I did that, it creates almost like the distressed effect that I was aiming to achieve with my actual final garment. And I thought this looked like a sleeve and this looked like a skirt, like a hand coming down, or an arm coming down, sorry. And these, like, I wanted to replicate this textile technique and then incorporate the shells as well. And how I did that was, in my final designs, I wanted to crochet a seaweed bag, like a seaweed shoulder bag, and then this is my final garment design. So I'd have an accessory and a garment. The way that I incorporated the scanned-in shells was I cut them, like I cut the scan out, and then I just stuck it onto my final design. So I have a front view and a back view. And then this is the final design of the garment. I don't like the legs, really, so don't look at the legs, but I was thinking of having basically the distressed white dress, like with this technique here, and then have like crocheted or knit. I was thinking of changing colors as I was knitting to like show the blue splashes of water, and then have the rope, which would again like link back to Ariel and how she had the rope. And then I wanted to include a little jellyfish on the shoulder, as I showed before, and yeah, some coral down here, like some coral reef. And this was my final design, really. And the way that I even came up with this design was because of this page. I was just creating like a rough sketch. I drew the outline of the dress, how I wanted it to be, the neckline, the sleeves, and the length of the dress. I made some notes, and then I thought, oh, I could just experiment with adding some details. So I added some little splashes, and then some rope, and then a jellyfish on the shoulder. And this was like a very, very rough and quick little sketch of the bag, which I didn't finish, but then I went on to create this. So this design, I will say, does change in the next sketchbook, and we will see that when I show it to you. However, these are all of the notes I've made. I feel like throughout this process I've realized that I quite enjoy my design process to go this way. So I create like little sketches, and then I write a bunch of notes about them, and then the next time I go to sketch I can just act on those notes. So this is really the first sketchbook, everything that is in here. So here's my second sketchbook. This is my design development sketchbook, and when we open the page we see a bunch of sticky notes. Now these are all like evidence of my planning, so I need to keep these. So what I would do with these is I would take a sticky note, I would write what it is that I need to do, and I would stick it right here at the top of my page. So when my sketchbook is closed, I can see which pages need attention, which pages need my work or just improvement. So I have quite a lot of these. So on the first page we have Premier Vision Research, and Premier Vision is the organization that my textile piece is going to be presented to. That is the brief of the project. If you are interested, you can just pause to read. I explain what Premier Vision is. And then I have a little flap which says, how is my project sustainable? So here I of course talk about how my project is sustainable. One thing that I will say that has changed from this is that I said I was going to use can tabs to represent how humans ultimately pollute the ocean, and how Ariel thinks that humans are so great, but in reality humans are causing all the harm. And that's actually what King Triton says, doesn't he? I know that he says that in the live action remake. So yes. And then speaking of the live action remake, my friend and I actually went to watch it. Out of all of these looks though, I'd have to say Heidi Klum is probably my favorite. Just really caught my eye, thought she was really pretty. And then obviously Halle Bailey herself. So just my favorite looks. There's different things that I like from each look. Like for example, Heidi Klum, it has to be everything. Like truly, I think that this is just so out of the box. I don't even know how to describe it. I just think it's really beautiful. The colors really like complement her. And then Chloe Bailey. I like the cutout at the front. I think it's very interesting, especially because like the rest of the dress is quite normal, and then we have this very interesting cut. Halle Bailey, I like the material, and then also the way that the like shell cups are quite different to how they typically can be when it comes to clothing. I like the sleeves here. I also like the sleeves here. I like the way that the hands come through the bows. I like Melissa McCarthy's sleeves here. Reminds me of jellyfish. I also like the way that her daughter's dressed. I think she looks beautiful. And then I like the pattern on Kelly Rowland's dress. And yeah, just everything here. I love the way that Halle Bailey is dressed. I like the colour, and I think it's sort of like a glittery material. I'm not sure what it would be called. So now we're moving on to my design development pages and my process notes. I don't want to talk too much about these, but you can just pause to read if you like. I will summarize what they are about, but basically I wanted to start like knitting my garment on one day. However, I couldn't start that day as I realized the needles that I had were too small. So my start date was delayed by a day because I had to wait for new needles to arrive, so I got bigger ones. And when I started using the needles, I felt like I was too inexperienced to use them, and that's when I had a bit of a crisis, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to stick to what I know best, and that is crochet. So I decided to crochet a sleeve, realized I didn't like the way that that looked, and so I went back to knitting. I gave it another go, and here is the knit sleeve. Here is the textile technique that I was going to implement, and that was the distressed knitting, so the drop stitch in knitting. Here is a page dedicated to the crochet sleeve, which I just didn't like. I just felt it did not fit the image that I had in my mind of my final piece, but I decided to include that to showcase the process. Then here I'm talking about the dress. So I tried on the dress here, and here's a close-up of the final sleeve. Both sleeves in total took about 16 hours, with each taking 8 hours, and the dress itself probably took about 16 to 24 hours to knit. I was thinking of crocheting a seaweed panel to drape over the body. I think I was thinking that the dress was going to be a little too plain. And here are samples of different amounts of cast-ons. So the first time that I cast on 65, and this was too little for me to fit comfortably. I didn't want this dress to be tight fit. I wanted it to be like a tube so that I could just fit in it, and then if I were to create something to tighten the waist, then I would. And then I did 80 cast-ons instead, and this was the desired size for me to comfortably fit all the way through. And I pinned them on. Then we have process of knitting the dress, thoughts, problems and solutions. And yeah, so these are just process pictures. If you stay tuned for my YouTube video tomorrow, you will see these in the video. These are screenshots from the clips that I took. If you want, again, you can pause to read. And yeah, I just go over all of my problems and solutions here. Here is the dress try on after I had just finished it. One problem that could have turned into a major problem that I will point out is the fact that once I finished my dress, I had cast off all of my stitches. However, I did not cut the yarn and I didn't tighten it off. I kept the yarn attached to the ball of yarn as I was trying it on, and I felt like something was wrong. As I was trying it on, it just felt a little too loose. You want to know what happened? The dress was coming apart, and I was stressed at this point. However, I was like, okay, if I start getting stressed, if I start to panic, then it's not going to go well. So I decided I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the next best thing, and that is to pick up all of the stitches that I dropped and then undo that row, re-knit that row, and then recast off all the stitches and then cut off the yarn and tie it off. I did that and it saved my work. This is the dress again, close-ups of the dress. And then I hate this page because I crocheted a waist cincher. So if you remember back to the first sketchbook when I showed you, there was rope wrapped around my design and also wrapped around Ariel. I thought rather than doing the rope, I could crochet a waist cincher. And I thought that this was a good idea because it would also modernize the look, and it could also maybe say, oh, if this happened in the present day, she could be wearing a waist cincher. Now, I didn't realize that the fact that the dress was distressed everywhere, the fully intact waist cincher would look odd. So this is what it looked like. And I used a shoelace to tighten it. I do not like this whatsoever. So I decided against the waist cincher. I still included the sample in my textile samples folder as evidence of experimentation, and I also wrote notes about the process. So yeah, it was at this point that I decided I would stick with the baggy sort of boxy fit of the dress, and that I like that. Moving on, we're now moving to the bag. So here is, I really like this page. I included a sample of the bag, and this is what it ended up looking like when I crocheted all of the panels and just put them together. Here you can see this panel goes on here in this image, and then I fold the extra bit over top of the panel, and then I put the strap over. Again, if you want to read. To be honest, there weren't many problems that I ran into when it came to crocheting the bag because I have crocheted bags before. However, I mean, because of the yarn, definitely it's different to what I'm used to working with. It was hard to see the stitches, but that didn't really bother me. So here we have some process pictures. And then we have the complete bag. This is the complete bag right here. And then in the bag, I put a bunch of shells because this was my idea for my photo shoot. So I had an idea to pack all the shells that I wanted to bring for the photo shoot in the bag. And then when it came to taking the actual pictures, I could have them just like spread out of the bag, if you get what I mean. I thought it would be a cute picture idea, and it ended up being so. Then we have a makeup board. So this was makeup inspo for me. This is my favorite picture. I went for something like this. Then we also have a hair board, so me just brainstorming how to have my hair. And then I also made a board of the location. So this is Botany Bay in Kent. Absolutely beautiful here, so pretty. And this was my initial photo shoot plan. Then this is a pose board that I made, just to practice posing and so that I know what I'm doing on the beach. So this is my final analysis of alterations from design illustration. And this is me just basically talking about all of the elements that I have changed from my initial design. If you want, you can pause to read. And then this is the final try on. So the final dress and the final bag. I made this into a little board. So here's the opening page of my lookbook. I decided that for this page, I wanted both me and the background to be the focus. And then here we have both emphasis on me as well as the background. I also did this really nice editing trick. I love to do this. Just messing about with the opacity and duplicating layers. So here I'm now drawing attention to the bag. And my teacher also suggested that I add some of the shells that I scanned in to the image, which I really like. Now this page, I'm also showing the bag. So if you remember earlier, I was telling you about how I wanted to take pictures with the shells coming out of the bag. So this is exactly what I did here. And then now I am drawing your attention to both the dress and the bag. I really like this picture, especially because of the algae in the background and the seaweed. I think it just really fits well. So now we are focusing on the dress, and if you can tell, I have strategically placed my images so that I'm bringing your attention from one element to the other. So here are just pictures of me modeling the dress. And then here is the final page. I think it's the perfect page to end on because I'm just looking off into the distance. And yeah, it's almost like you're immersed in it. And that is it. I have 1, 2, 3 pages left, and what I am thinking to do with these pages is either include pictures from the surroundings, so not the beach, but my mum and I, we actually walked around the area and it was very sea themed, and I saw a lot of things that relate to my theme, so I could stick the images here, or I could also print out my design proposals and then evaluation, and they should take up these next 3 pages. And as of now, that is it for my sketchbook. There's really nothing else that I'm going to be adding to it besides those, either the images of the surroundings and or the design proposal section 2 and evaluation. That is it. That is really my 2 sketchbooks. But yeah, that was my first year fashion design sketchbook tour. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope that if you are interested in studying fashion design, that I helped maybe answer the questions that you had when it comes to what it is that we actually study and what we do, what goes into the design process. Research is a big part, and you can see I have a whole sketchbook full of that. This was my first year of final major project, so obviously there are things that I've learned throughout the process, and to be honest, I am really pleased with the way that FMP went. I love my final outcomes. I love my lookbook. I love the pictures. I'm very happy with everything, and I am also very happy to be done because I am tired, to be honest. And also it means that I have more time to focus on social media, on YouTube, and, you know, also some time to myself because we always need that. And yeah, I mean, speaking of social media, I might as well plug the socials. So I have been quite active on TikTok. I mean, if you want to get through to me, or if you want to see what I'm doing and just maybe my other hobbies or just random things, then you can just follow me on TikTok. I've realized that I really like making TikToks. You can also follow my Pinterest, my Instagram. I think that's it. And then of course subscribe to my YouTube if you like and you want to see more videos. If you are a returning subscriber, I do want to ask you, would you like more of maybe fashion design related videos on YouTube, or maybe just other forms of content, not just crochet? I am interested in branching out, maybe posting some knitting tutorials, maybe some vlogs, more fashion related videos. Just let me know how you feel. I do have another fashion related video coming up tomorrow. It's going to be my FMP vlog, so if you are interested in seeing the behind the scenes of even like this being created, then yeah, be sure to check that out. And I think that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching as usual. I love you so much. Thank you for all of your support, and I hope to see you tomorrow.